Powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. Now, live from inside the Matt Black Kia Studios. This is Football at 4.
Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Prop Swap, America's sports betting marketplace. Sell your sports bets, take your profit, find out how. PropSwap.com. Download the PropSwap app today. Geoff Mosher is at the Combine. Howie Roseman, Nick Sirianni at the Combine. They both spoke today. Some highlights we'll discuss right now on today's edition of Football at 4. Geoff Mosher from InsideTheBirds.com and the Inside the Birds podcast is with me in downtown Indianapolis. What's going on, Mosher?
Mike, what's going on? How are you?
All is well, my man, and we got treated to Howie Roseman and Nick Sirianni today. That was a scheduled media session, and we got some interesting things to discuss today, and we'll do that now. I do want to ask you, though, James Harden is debuting tonight. Now, we're all trying to figure out who the best bell ringer is, and our text messages are saying Jason Kelce in the Mummers outfit.
Oh, man, I can't think of anything that would be better than that. Jason Kelce in the Mummers outfit, that's a home run.
Right, and Nick Sirianni.
Or a slam dunk, I should say.
Yeah, there you go. Nick Sirianni today said the full court press, if you will, is on. They sent him a keg, and they're hoping that Kelce will return for this season. The Eagles want Kelce back, right?
They absolutely want Kelce back. Do they have contingency plans? Yes, they've had some for a while, obviously. Landon Dickerson, obviously Isaac Seumalo. When they drafted him, they thought he could be a potential replacement at center. But the bottom line is Jason Kelce is an all-pro center, and you can make a strong argument that last year was one of the best years of his 11-year career, and they want to continue to build. And as long as they have in-house replacements, why not still have him back? If he gets hurt, somebody can fill in, and it's just like continuing to be a great bridge until the next guy and allowing the team to have success. So there's really no reason to not want him back other than the poison pill that they put in his contract that would pay him $30 million, which would obviously have to be restructured and re-agreed upon, or else that would be a little bit of a slight overpayment for even as good as Jason Kelce is.
Yeah, now let's hit some of the highlights of Roseman today. First question right out of the chutes. Philosophy changed at all regarding the linebacker position? Read the tea leaves on his answer.
Yeah, I mean, I think he joked that, well, it's not like you ever want to have bad players at a position, but by the same token, you can tell that the linebacker job role itself has changed a little bit with the new coaching staff. You look at a Jannard Avery, who was technically a linebacker, but he kind of played right on the ball there. Right on the line of scrimmage at a time. So I'm sure that they would like to have kind of a player who can do what Jannard Avery did, but also maybe drop into coverage as well, because they do more stuff on the back end, disguise, deception. Someone who you probably ordinarily would see in a 3-4 defense, but could also play in a multiple style defense that the Eagles are playing. So if they're going to draft someone really high, it's probably going to be someone with some great athletic skills that could also rush the passer and drop into coverage. And at that point, you're either talking about a multifaceted defensive end or a rush linebacker, which is a little different than your traditional 4-3 inside linebacker that everybody wants to see them get better at.
Well, one of the things, he said to me, that kind of stood out a little bit, I guess. And it might not have been in that first question that he was asked, but it was maybe a little bit further on when he was asked about I guess it was the linebackers. He said, we grade our linebackers the same way we grade everybody else. Now, he didn't say that, hey, that means we're going to, draft them a little bit higher. But he was asked about John Gannon, and we kind of touched on this the other day, about Gannon being asked, do you draft with that in mind? And his answer was kind of, because he mentioned something about Jim Schwartz, and it almost sounded like he was trying to say Schwartz didn't value linebackers. We now have a new guy in here, and that might change our thoughts. Did you hear that?
Yeah, but I think that folds into the discussion where Jim had your traditional linebackers, your middle linebacker, your two outside linebackers, and a 4-3. If it's nickel, it's really just two nickel linebackers who are 4-3 linebackers. Jonathan, like we talked about, will play these looks that Jim never played, like 5-1 and 5-2 looks where the linebacker actually comes down on the line of scrimmage. So that is a different wrinkle than what Jim did. And then that kind of changes the dynamic of their defense and front seven a little bit and gives them a different kind of prospect to look at as they evaluate. So I don't know that it's not that I think he's saying Jim Schwartz didn't care about linebackers or evaluates them. Their importance.
So their roles were different.
Yeah, I mean, we know this goes beyond Jim Schwartz. I mean, they've been throwing, mid-round, late-round, undrafted linebackers out there since the middle days of Andy Reid's career. So this thing has been an organizational philosophy,
right?
As well.
And the exact quote is, sorry, I couldn't get it loaded, but he says, I think when you look at our defense and the role of linebackers, Coach Schwartz, who obviously was a phenomenal defensive coach for us, there were 3 off-the-ball linebackers. The definition of what our linebackers are doing have changed with Gannon. So he's saying the role has changed, but didn't Schwartz want better linebackers? Like, wasn't he kind of not happy with Davion Taylor?
Yeah, I mean, it was my understanding that year he was, hoping that in the first round they would come out with Kenneth Murray, or that he was very, impressed by Kenneth Murray. I mean, look, all defensive coordinators want the best talent that they can get, and the Eagles have gradually gone from sort of valuing linebacker less than other positions to sort of devaluing it by the way they've gone about acquiring their linebacker talent over the last few years. We're talking about, 1 year free agent signing in Eric Wilson. We're talking about Alex Singleton and TJ Edwards being undrafted free agents. We're talking about Davion Taylor being a reach of a 3rd round pick. That was a pick made because of tremendous athleticism, but not much linebacker pedigree. So they've taken something that they've already done differently and kind of compounded that by putting even less emphasis on the position.
All right. Next, he doubled down today on Hurts. He said last time we talked, you were very confident. And he confidently answered today, yeah, no doubt about it. So Are you buying what they're selling still? That the first snap this year will be taken by Jalen Hurts. That's the message, right?
That is the message. It's not that I don't believe their overall message. I still think we're talking about availability and supply and demand. And right now, Jalen Hurts is their quarterback under contract. And right now, it's kind of uncertain if there's going to be a better quarterback or a veteran quarterback that we talk about, a Deshaun Watson or Russell Wilson, or are those guys actually going to be available? And so if they're not, then, and I think that Howie talks as if he understands that the current events tell you that nobody is available. Okay. So that's why I always say everything's subject to change in the NFL. We talk about this all the time. People say things and then something happens, and then the people who said one thing completely change their mind, do something else.
Well, yesterday we heard Russell Wilson say he doesn't want to play on the East Coast.
Oh, I actually didn't. See, when you're out here in Indianapolis, it's funny. You're immersed in the NFL world, but you're kind of away from like the news that's breaking nationally. And, you're out here at weird hours talking to people and not knowing what's going on. So I did not know Russell Wilson said that.
He was on a show and he got asked something about playing for the Washington Commanders. And he essentially said the West Coast is a better fit for me.
I'm surprised. Well, it's interesting that he even entertained that question instead of shutting it down and saying, no, I've said I'm going to be a Seahawk for the rest of my life or career or whatever. So the fact that he even kind of went that far kind of tells you that the carrot's always going to dangle.
Well, and Pete Carroll said today that the Seahawks have, quote, no intention of trading Russell Wilson.
Right. That I knew. I was there at his press conference. So, yeah, they have no intention. So, but it's weird. You have the coach saying, we have no intention of trading this guy. And the quarterback saying, I'm still a West Coast guy more than I wouldn't, East Coast guy is not my thing. Like if they're in lockstep, then the quarterback just says, I'm not going anywhere. I'm in Seattle.
Right. Exactly.
So, who knows?
All right. Geoff Mosher, Football at 4. He is live at the Combine. Today, Howie Roseman, he spoke, and he got asked about the thing that we discussed about safeguarding, overfitting the scheme if your coach gets basically hired away, right? I mean, so I thought it was interesting that question was brought up, and I don't know that he touched on it but he said, I don't think that's going to be an issue. So I don't know if he's basically saying I'm drafting players that I like, or as opposed to players that the coaches want.
Yeah, no, I think the point he was trying to make was that they're not reinventing the wheel. Like, yeah, are there certain traits? Are there certain positional versatilities that they would like to see out of, to fit Jonathan Gannon's defense? Yes, but it doesn't. His overall point was we're not going to go so radical that if we were to lose Jonathan Gannon and a new defensive coordinator with a different philosophy comes in, that defensive coordinator will have no idea how to use the current personnel. Remember, the Eagles went from 4-3 to 3-4 when they fired Andy Reid and went to Chip Kelly. And yet guys like Brandon Graham and Trent Cole still stayed. It wasn't like radically different. They signed Connor Barwin as a free agent. That's not typically the type of player they would sign, but they did to fit the defense. And then he even adjusted back to the 4-3 after Chip was fired. And then Isaac Sopolaga was a defensive tackle from the 49ers. They signed for 1 year to be a run stopper. So that's what Howie's point is, that you can still put together a good defense with your own philosophy to fit one guy. And then if someone else has to take it over, it's not like you have to throw the entire defense out and start anew.
All right. Now, you asked him a question regarding having 3 picks and the history of teams having 3 picks, that it hasn't really worked out all that much. Did you like his answer for that? Did you get what you were looking for?
I think Howie thinks I'm always picking on him because he immediately goes, oh, thanks for reminding me of the history. And I said, Howie, you weren't one of these teams. It's not like it was the Eagles who had these 3 first-round picks. It's just the history that you and I have gone through on the segment a couple of times. And he said he was aware of it. And that's why he started to talk about the multiple options that you have when you have 3 first-round picks. You have flexibility to move up. You have flexibility to move down. You have flexibility to package. You could make 3 picks. I did understand his point that it's hard to compare one team's 3 first-round picks to another because they're all in different parts of it. Like the Eagles are picking 15, 16, and 19. That's different as if you were picking, like the Browns that year had the number 1 pick where they got Myles Garrett, and then they had 2 picks later in the first round where the percentage of success starts to go down, and they wound up taking, I want to say, Jabril Peppers and David Njoku, the tight end. So, he was basically saying, of course, you got the number 1 pick and you might do well there. It's not a given that you will, but you might. But then those other 2 picks shouldn't be expected to be like having number 1 overall picks. His picks are all kind of in a similar cluster. They're not in that area where you're usually getting elite talent. That's usually top 5, top 10, depending on the year. But it's also not 20 or lower. So it's an interesting spot that gives him a lot of flexibility. And I made sure to follow up after his answer to say, so just to be clear, you're saying you don't feel the need to make 3 picks. See, a lot of people talk about that, Mike. I'm sure you deal with that with callers and people. Oh, we're going to ask 3 guys, and they give you the 3 guys that they're going to take. But I don't know that they're going to sit there and feel compelled to say we need 3 first-round picks this year. I think they're going to be saying, what can we do to get the best talent on this team with these 3 picks? That might involve moving up, take packaging 2, or maybe even taking 1 and moving down to get other picks.
Right. And I will tell you, I'm sure you got the transcript, but your follow-up question did make the transcript.
Oh, that's good. Good. That was important to me.
You feel like you have to make 3 first-round picks is what I'm getting at. Geoff Mosher asked. Howie Roseman, no. Answer.
There you go.
That was it. He just said no.
That was pretty clear then.
All right, so let's go down the list of things that he was asked about. And he was asked about receivers and the receivers taking a step forward. But he brought up Watkins first. I mean, Watkins seems to be the guy that they're looking at. So, in other words, if they bring in another receiver, is Watkins the odd man out or is Reagor the odd man out?
It's a very, very good question. I think there's a lot to be lot of questions.
But aren't there answers saying that they value Watkins more than Reagor?
Absolutely. When they publicly talk, they talk about what Watkins has accomplished in his second year. And when they talk about Jalen Reagor, they talk about what they want to see from Jalen Reagor. Now, some of that is obvious. Watkins is a 6th-round pick who had a good year. Some 6th-round picks never see the field. So that's good. You would naturally talk about what he's accomplished. And Jalen has obviously not put up the numbers. The one thing that I don't think that they talk about enough, Mike, is what is their plan to get Jalen Reagor to either improve to the area that they want to see or put him in positions to improve. How can you improve as a wide receiver in all forms and fashions as far as making an impact on the team if you go through 2, 3, 4, 5 games seeing 1 to 3 targets a game? What is their plan to get the ball in his hands more so he's more comfortable? It seems like they want to put everything on Jalen, and that's fine, but I would just like to also hear their accountability and responsibility for how they've coached him and how when he's on the field, he barely sees the ball.
I think that's a fair point you bring up, and I wonder if the retort would be, we don't trust him enough to let him do anything more.
Well, I can't buy that. He's on the field 65% of the time. The ball goes more obviously to Devontae Smith and obviously to to Dallas Goedert, but it goes to them so much that there's very little in for the rest. And as we've detailed, and Greg Cosell has told us on our platform and many others, you watch the tape and you see there's Jalen Reagor open, there's Quez Watkins open, there's some other guys that are open, and the quarterback doesn't see it. So what is their plan to help the quarterback distribute the ball better and make it a more diversified offense that's impactful on every level of the field?
Yeah. Well, that's fair. I mean, so if you could say, hey, Rager's getting open, he would be more productive. The quarterback's at fault here is basically how you might be spinning it.
Yeah, I don't want to say
like if I put Jalen Reagor
fault for all of Jalen's career. I'm just saying that's one part of it that never gets addressed by them.
Right. So in other words, like if I put Jalen Reagor in Buffalo and he's their slot man, maybe he's got 70 catches. I don't know.
Perhaps. I mean, we saw that with Nelson when he moved to the slot, Nelson Aguilar. I mean, I don't want to say it's apples to apples. I'm just saying, like, if you say, I want to see more out of Jalen Reagor, I think what you should also say, and we need to do this to get to be able to see more. Because just putting him out there and saying get open clearly isn't the only answer, because there have been times where he's been out there and open. Now, there's also been times where he's been dropping the ball, and that's on him. And that's why they say we want to see more from him. Fine. I totally agree. But I want to see more from them as far as creativity, and they're supposed to be a wide receivers group, right? Coaches. Nick Sirianni played wide receiver. Patullo was a wide receiver and a quarterback. Aaron Moorhead played wide receiver at college and the NFL. So what are you guys doing to do a better job of improving one of your players?
All right, Geoff Mosher from the Inside the Birds podcast. Obviously, you got you're at the combine. He was asked about the quarterback class. I don't know. I know they've talked to, according to some tweets I'm following out there, you know, they met with at least some of the quarterbacks, and it seems like a lot of the wide receivers.
Yep, met with a lot of wide receivers, which is why I say to you that the answer to the question of what they're going to do with their wide receiver group is yet to be determined, and we will know more after free agency and the draft. And we may, you know, Adam and I may have some more by the time we get out of Indianapolis. All
right. When's the actual? Is that tonight? Does it begin or tomorrow?
I don't even remember is today Wednesday?
Today's Wednesday.
Yeah, I believe workouts, the public televised workouts begin tomorrow.
Gotcha.
I hope I'm right about that.
Well, I know. Well, they moved it to like a primetime night thing, right? This is like a made-for-TV event now.
Of course.
You know, they used to be on all day.
Yep. No, gotta keep draining the golden goose, Mike.
Yeah. Oh, I get it.
Wait till they move this thing to L.A. or, you know, some other, you know, ritzy city, and they get fans more involved in it.
Yeah, I know. Indianapolis is not very glamorous.
Well, the funny thing is, it's 65 degrees today. It was 63 yesterday. This has been the best weather in Indianapolis Combine history, or at least for us since I've been going to it. And honestly, I like coming to Indianapolis. I like that everything is centralized. Everything's easy to get to. They have world-class restaurants here. They have some of the best restaurants you'll ever eat at here in Indianapolis.
It's funny you say that, because there's another guy that I know that I've had, you know, that talks to me off the air a lot and says how much he hates Indianapolis.
I mean, maybe he hates the cold, but like you can walk through all the buildings, like Minneapolis, Minnesota too. You can walk through all the buildings and get to where you go without ever having to go outside because they're all linked with skywalks. But there's great culture. There's great food.
Gotcha.
The people here are really nice. I love Indianapolis, to be honest.
Cool. Well,
I wouldn't want to spend like 3 months here, but I mean, I could do 4 or 5 nights of eating and drinking and meeting people here. It's good.
Did you see what Brandon Brown said? By the way, did you see his quote?
No, I did not.
On the he was asked about Philly and basically he gave them like the front office, like working in that front office, and gave them very glowing reviews for their ability, their willingness to really like think outside the box and just take chances, even if they're wrong. Like they don't care if they're wrong; they're just willing to do. Basically, they leave every stone unturned. They'll look at everything. He said they actually hired scouts to go scout college basketball games.
Yes, that's something we talked about on Inside the Birds a lot, that they put a lot more emphasis on trying to find that wave of basketball player who's going to transition to the NFL. Like, who's the Kent State guy? Was that Antonio Gates?
Yes.
No.
Yeah, Gates.
Yeah, and then obviously you've seen that with some other guy. There's another guy in the league who's done that too. So, they've been on top of that for a little bit. And I think
he even went back to like hiring Chip Kelly, like that being something that, hey, it didn't work, but they're not afraid to do something that it's gonna that will fail. That if it's outside the box and different.
Yeah, I mean, look at the drafting of Jalen Hurts and what they said. They said we value the backup quarterback position more than maybe any other team, and we're not afraid.
And Mosher just vanished into the Indianapolis culture. All right, football at 4, 97.3 ESPN. We appreciate him. Of course, you can listen to more from Mosher on the Inside the Birds podcast.